Hey, Brian from SnakeBytes here. I'm at Peter Birch's of Colorful Critters, who no doubt has the most extensive collection of Anterasia Pythons. You're watching SnakeBytes. Anterasia are a genus of small pythons that are endemic to Australia, the surrounding islands, and recently even found in Papua New Guinea. It comprises of 4 species, 2 species of STIMSON'S, 1 children's, and a MACULOSA or spotted pythons, with the possibility of a 5th new pygmy banded python. I want to start with showing you the Antile or Pythons. They're the smallest python on the planet, maxing out at about 20 to 24 inches, and believe it or not, this is an adult male right here, and it certainly is a cute one at that. Now these guys are all egg layers, but Pythons are probably the smallest clutch sizes, usually about 6 eggs, and they are just really gorgeous animals. But there's so much variety that Peter is working with right now. I can't wait to dive into it. So let's move on to the next thing. Although the entire genus of Anterasia are commonly very tame, they have a very heavy food response. So how many times did Brian get bit while filming this week's show? A, 19 times, B, 10 times, or C, 6 times? Go ahead and answer down below in the comments and check back later in the show to see if you have the correct answer. For this week's Reptile Report, we're going to be highlighting arachnids. Go ahead and check out the URL down below or click on the link in the description. As with all the Anterasia that Peter's working with, he's starting to work with mutations. Now what you have to remember is that he's pretty much in the early stages of trying to figure out the majority of these mutations. So although he's producing crazy stuff, we're going to know in a few years what the real key to the genetics are. It's no difference with these animals right here. This is a yearling patternless Pythons, and I gotta tell you, this animal here is just a normal, and I've never held one before. I'm just absolutely blown away by the amount of red and rust color that's breaking through. But when you put it into a patternless animal with just a handful of freckles coming out, wow, these are some pretty amazing animals. I can't wait to see what the future holds. Moving on to the CHILDRENI, they're a slightly larger animal than the anthill pythons, but what makes a children really stand out is the fact that when they hatch, they have a lot of pattern, and a lot of them, as they get older, that pattern will fade out, some even into patternless animals. Now these guys will produce about a dozen eggs or so, so they're definitely more than the anthills, but not quite as much as the spotted pythons. But these were the first Australian snake that I personally ever worked with and personally produced. But I want to go ahead and show you some patternless animals right now. So this is a patternless children's python, and what it basically is just void of all of the blotching or saddling. Now what makes it confusing is there's a few ways to get a patternless children's python. Some naturally just fade out to patternless animals. Some are polygenic or line bred, and believe it or not, there's even a recessive mutation for patternless. This is kind of the theme with Anterasia, and Peter is really trying to unlock that genetic code to figure out the best way to achieve the coolest colors. But I tell you what, I'm far from over, so let's check out the next one. This is really a gorgeous children's python. Now this is a polygenic trait, which basically just means line breeding. Now let me explain what I mean by that. You can take the yellowest animal and breed it to other animals that are really yellow, and each generation you're just going to get better and better animals. It takes some time and dedication, but the results are really amazing. This is actually called a yellow children's python, and you can certainly see where its namesake came from. Just that super high yellow up its sides. Now the ghost children's pythons are really interesting. What you basically have going on is not only a reduction of pattern, which is really apparent as babies, but also you have an extreme silvering out of the animal itself. Now interestingly enough, these guys typically get more silver at nighttime rather than in the day, so it's kind of an interesting little twist to the ghost guys. And check this animal out here. This is what's being called a granite ghost children's python. So it has both the ghost gene going on as well as the reduction of pattern that makes it really granity. I tell you what, these are actually beautiful animals, but I'm really digging this granite ghost. Alright, so on to something a little more traditional when it comes to genetics. This is a T-positive CHILDRENI, which basically just means it's tyrosinase positive, which is basically that more purple look of melanin, and this is a really gorgeous animal. Again, it's a simple recessive mutation, so it kind of works the same thing as an albino or a piebald in ball pythons, but again, in the children's it just makes that orange come out and the purple start coming through the sides. This is a real key mutation to breed into other animals to produce some really cool paint jobs. Moving on to STIMSON'S pythons, I want to show you a bunch of cool localities. Now what's really interesting about the Anterasia is the fact that when you get into certain localities, the animals can look radically different, which makes it really cool when you're trying to go for cool paint jobs, because you can manipulate a lot of the color and pattern this way. This happens to be a New South Wales version, and it's a really gorgeous snake. This is a good example of that radical difference between the different localities. This is a Pilbara locality. You can see it looks so different than the New South Wales. But by far my favorite of the stimmies are the wheat belt animals. Take a look at that. I have a feeling that my love for giraffes is what makes me love the wheat belt so much. For some reason when I look at the pattern, I think of a giraffe's pattern, and they're really spectacular animals. Now what's interesting is, just like I was showing you, that within an actual locality you can sometimes have radical difference in color. This is also a wheat belt animal. Take a look at how different those two animals are. It's pretty incredible. So again, there's a great color palette to work with, not only with different localities, but even with animals within the same locality. Alright, so let's get into some of the mutations of the stimmies now. This happens to be a female that you can see is just about to lay a clutch of eggs, so you got to be really careful with her. This is what Pete's calling a sunburst stimmy, and as you can see, the oranges just are bursting out of this animal. Now this is still an unproven trait, but I have a feeling that with some good eggs here, we're going to see some offspring that are going to be pretty awesome. Now these are some amazing animals. These are what appears to be a dominant or codominant mutation of stimmy called the glowworms. Now this is a beautiful animal right here, and it's definitely very stunning, but I want to show you the animal that won Best in Show at the Scales and Tails Festival that we were just at. Again, this is just a gorgeous snake. Take a look at that. And again, this is called a glowworm, because it absolutely is glowing. Sticking with the same line is the glowworm. These are actually cousins of them, which is pretty interesting. So the parents of the glowworm's siblings produce these animals. So you certainly can see there's definitely something codominant or dominant going on, but the glowworm definitely has more orange in it. But these are beautiful in their own right with the really reduced pattern and really interesting color. But I tell you what, it's not often that I open up a cage of any snake and kind of get thrown for a loop, but take a look at this animal. Pete calls this the devil, and you can certainly see from those eyes why he did it. When I opened the cage and saw those eyes, it kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, what the hell is that? But that is just one of the coolest things I've ever seen. This is just the start of a new project. This was coming from breeding two Pilbara animals together, and you're starting to see some really interesting blotching and coloring along the sides. I'm sure that it's going to take a few more generations to really figure out what this is and to expound upon the interesting colors, but regardless, it's a pretty cool animal. Just look at these black blotching, and then there's even yellow pigment coming through. I tell you what, this is definitely the start of something cool. Moving on to spotted pythons or maculosis, there's a bunch of really cool mutation that Peter is working with. This is actually called an ebony mac. As you can see, it's really, really dark. It's almost to the point where you can barely see the patterning, and the iridescence on this animal is 10 times more than a normal maculosis. The spotted pythons are the largest of the Anterasia. Just take a look at this male right here. He's actually 20 years old. They're also the largest production animal of the group, with having clutches up to 20 eggs. I tell you what, maculosis are really cool animals, but some of the mutations are blowing my mind, so let's keep going on that. This is what they're calling a line maculosis, but what's interesting about this is that when you breed a line to a line, you're not necessarily always getting great lined animals, but if you breed a line to a normal, most of them are coming out lined. Ironically enough, the majority of the best lined animals are females, so there's a possibility there might be some sex-linked trait going on here, but right now there's a great clutch cooking of the best lined animal bred to the best line, so we'll wait to see what hatches from that. This is what they're calling a caramel mac, and the reason that it's named that is simply because it kind of looks caramely colored. There's no doubt that it's devoid of all black pigment, so it's going to be really interesting to see how this trait moves along. You can tell it's keyed in on my hand right now, but we don't know yet if it's recessive, line bred, or even maybe co-dominant, but they have some babies that just hatched, so the project is well on its way. These are really beautiful snakes here with that high contrast. It's what they're calling Pearl Max, which is a polygenic or line-bred trait bred to the Cape York animals. Now the Cape York animals already have a lot of high contrast, but obviously the pearls are being line bred for a reduced pattern, and they're definitely coming out with some awesome results. Now on to a couple recessive mutations, one that I actually personally own and one that I've never seen in person at all. I'm going to start with the GRANITE maculosis, which is a recessive mutation. Again, I own a few of these myself, but I gotta be honest, this one blows mine away a lot. So it's just basically a granited out mutation that makes it look really cool. But I want to show you something that I've been dreaming about seeing for quite some time, and that's the albino spotted python. Take a look at that beauty right here. Now, I've never seen one in person. I'll be honest with you, I've seen a handful of pictures and have been very jealous of them, but in person, they're even better than I imagined it was. Again, it's just a simple recessive mutation, but one that is absolutely outrageous. This is a blonde mac, which is a locality animal that's been line bred for specific colors and patterns. Again, the more yellow and that reduction of pattern is what they're looking for. Continual line breeding is just going to make this project better and better with each generation. Okay, by far my favorite mutation that I've seen here at Peter's place have been the platinum maculosis. These guys are just absolutely outrageous. Now, we're not sure if it's codominant, recessive, polygenic, or maybe even allelic at this point. All he knows is that he can reproduce it, but like so many of the Anterasia, it's early on in projects, so there's a lot more breeding before you can really tell what's going on, but you can see that it's completely whacking out the pattern and totally washing out the color. These are definitely the most impressive of the Anterasia in my opinion, and what's really interesting is they're extremely polymorphic as well. You saw that animal, well, take a look at this one that is basically almost patternless, but again, what's so weird is it changes the overall base color of a spotted python, so there's a lot going on here, and I have a feeling that through selective breeding, this is going to be the key to a lot of incredible mutations. Now, this certainly is a rare treat right here. I could potentially be holding a new species of python. They're calling it the pygmy banded python, and it's living side by side with the maculosis, but it's only about 2/3 the size, so it kind of falls right in between the anthills and the CHILDRENI as far as size, and it's very consistent with every specimen that they've collected. You can also tell that its head shape is quite a bit different than a STIMI, a maculosis, or a CHILDRENI, and you can certainly see this very unique banded patterning going on. Now, they're still working on whether or not it will be reclassified, but nevertheless, it's really cool to hold an animal that could possibly be a new species of python. But I don't know about you guys, but Pete's collection is absolutely amazing, and I know I've fallen in love with Anterasia. I'm certainly jealous that I'm going to be going back home to America and not be able to bring any of these beautiful animals with me, but I can guarantee you I'm going to be keeping a close eye on his progress. So how many times did Brian get bit while filming this week's show? If you said C, 6, you're 100% correct. Good job.
If you want to save your reptiles, get serious, get ZooMed. To check out all their product line, visit zoomed.com.
Alright guys, so today's show was all about little python species, and I really like little pythons. They're so cute and tiny. I want to know, would you rather have a big snake or a little snake? Leave a comment below and let us know.
So there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I tell you what, these Anterasia are amazing, and I only hope that one day we'll have that variety in the United States. And as always, I was Facebooking and tweeting my way through it, so make sure to follow me over at SnakeBytesTV. Until next week, you've been watching Snake Bites. Look how gorgeous that animal is right there. And they're really big for rainbow boas as well.